Welcome to episode 227 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melisa Liberman, and today I am so excited to talk with you about thought leadership and the hidden asset, we'll say, that you might be missing in your business to make thought leadership so much easier for you, so much more valuable for your business and for the audience, and also to make it easier to be consistent. So that's what we're focused on today. We'll dive into that topic here in a moment. But before we do, I thought it would be important to just take a pause here. If you're listening in the real time, it's toward the beginning of Q3. Can you believe it? That is crazy to me. It is the beginning of Q3. I want to encourage you here. If you're listening to this episode and feeling discouraged, if you're feeling like that it's a really tough year, if you're feeling that you're behind, I want to encourage you to say that even though it's the summer, even though it's a time where and buyers are taking a lot of vacations or time off or seem distracted, even though the world seems crazy, it is crazy at the moment. Despite all of those things, I want to encourage you that clients are still buying consulting services. Clients are buying consulting from independent consultants. Pipelines are growing. I see growing pipelines every single day from consultants. And your ideal clients want your expertise. So if you're feeling discouraged or frustrated or that this is just not the best time of year to be selling consulting, and you're considering even revising your goals for whatever, because of all of this, I want to encourage you to stay the course. You can be successful in your consulting business, and the proof points are out there. I see them because I work, with consultants and see behind the scenes every single day. I can assure you that there are clients out there who need you, and I want to encourage you to keep going. And if you're having an amazing year on the flip side, keep going as well. Maybe it's time to push yourself and increase your goal. So that's my short message to you here at the beginning of Q3. And now let's dive into today's episode. Maybe I'll share a quick personal note before we do that. The summer months are here. I switch over to my summer schedule, which involves a little bit less client facing time for me. I reduce my client load in the summer so I can focus on the clients that I have and also be able to juggle all the kid things. For me, my oldest is going into high school, which in the US is ninth grade. And the middle one is going into middle school here in another, I think it's 6 weeks or something. It's crazy how quickly this summer has gone by. And the youngest it will be in fourth. So he's getting close to finishing up elementary school. It's so crazy. But this summer, I've spent a lot of time traveling to Italy with the oldest. I've been to Albuquerque with my husband and all three kids for a swim meet. We're going to Dallas for water polo, Junior Olympics. So just so much going on this summer. But at the same time, having this space to support clients and to really be thinking about the business. And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is how to make it easier, let's say it that way, how to make it easier to stay consistent with thought leadership, overcome some of the common blockers that I hear from consultants so frequently about what keeps them from even starting any thought leadership process, let alone staying consistent. And so that's why we're here with today's episode. The agenda for today. First, we're going to talk about what is this thought leadership block. We'll talk about what is thought leadership as well, just so we're on the same page. What is the block around it that is so common for consultants? So you can really identify whether or not what's going on for you might be something that's just a normal situation that you can overcome. Then we'll talk about the solution to the thought leadership block. And that solution it can be really effective in either you might be someone who hasn't been consistent with thought leadership, or you might be someone who has been, but it's just not creating the results that you're looking for. And so this solution that I'll share with you can satisfy and help you with both of those scenarios. Then we'll dive into that solution. I'll give you explain what it is in great detail, and then we'll talk about the 5 steps to operationalize this for yourself. So you've got a repeatable process to operationalize your content and your thought leadership and using this hidden asset in your business that I'll point out to you. And then we'll wrap it up with next steps to put the episode into action. Okay, the companion resource that goes along with today's episode, not only the thought leadership component that we're talking about, but also the fact that it's the beginning of Q3. I want to encourage you to go take the Consultant's Business Health Assessment. You can find it at icassessment.com. That's the 2 letters, independent consultant, icassessment.com. And there, what you'll find is I think it's 14 or so questions that is in the assessment, asking you about all aspects of your business, and then it will give you a rating. So you can see what's going well, what's green, what's yellow, what's red, and give you some very clear and specific and tangible next steps to improve those areas of your business that are underperforming. So if you've taken it in the past, I would encourage you to go take it again so you can see where your business is evolving to. And if you haven't yet taken it, go take it now so you can have a really strong baseline for Q3 and help you to identify and prioritize those needle movers in your business. Again, that's at icassessment.com. Okay, with that, let's dive into the topic for today. So we're talking about thought leadership. First of all, what is thought leadership? When I use that phrase, I'm talking about you sharing your perspective on what you do as a consultant for your ideal client, for the types of problems that you solve, for the outcomes that you help your clients to drive, and your perspective on your industry. That's thought leadership, really. What could it look like? It could look like posting on LinkedIn, of course. It could look like doing videos on LinkedIn. It could look like having a YouTube channel. It could look like having a podcast. It could look like speaking. It could look like writing or having a Substack. There's so many different avenues, of course, as you know, to get yourself to the place where you're publishing thought leadership and putting your voice out there, your unique perspective on your industry, on your specialization, on your unique place in the market. Now, ideally, it can be easier if you have a niche or a specialization, so you know exactly what the topics are that you're talking about and to whom you're talking. But I will say, even if you don't yet have that, you might be more of a general consultant for right now. Don't avoid this until you feel like you have a good specialization. Start now and use it as a tool to refine your specialization, to see what you care to talk about, to see what's resonating with your audience, and as a way to really dial in on that niche if you don't have one. So that's what we're talking about today in terms of thought leadership. Ultimately, the goal of thought leadership is to help you to become known in the market, of course, and for clients to find you. But what I hear so often when it comes to thought leadership, one of the biggest blockers or that obstacle that we were just talking about is the question, what am I going to write about or speak about? It's so common for consultants to know that this is an important pillar of a business, at the same time to not move forward with it because they're worried about what they have to say isn't unique enough, or it's just adding to the noise in the, on LinkedIn, for example. And perhaps even that publishing some form of thought leadership or speaking or, writing a newsletter, for example, could even do more harm than good, because it can be so common to think, I don't have something unique to say. Everyone already is talking about the things that I would be talking about. And I might come across as not as expertly as I could. Those are very common ways of thinking. And so for you, I encourage you to take a moment here and ask yourself, do you have a well-oiled machine when it comes to thought leadership? And by that I mean, are you regularly publishing in some form or fashion? I'm going to continue using thought leadership, but think of it in all those different forums that I just listed out for you. And there are others as well, of course. Are you regularly practicing thought leadership in your business? And is the thought leadership that you are publishing resulting in ultimately the outcomes that you're trying to drive? Those are the main questions. If the answers to those two questions are no, or not yet, or not to my full potential, then this is really an episode that I encourage you to listen to and implement so that you start ripping off the band-aid and building up that muscle for yourself. I will tell you, I was in the same boat when I first started consulting. I felt mortified to start the idea of posting on LinkedIn felt absolutely so far beyond what I was capable of or willing to do. I can't even imagine how I could have ever be at the place that I'm at now in terms of publishing on LinkedIn, and this podcast primarily. But how did I get from hiding and not being willing to post on LinkedIn or even change my headline at one point to now to the point of publishing a weekly podcast? It wasn't just a night and day, evolution here. It took some steps. And the first steps were being willing to have people judge me, to have people question. One of the biggest fears that I had were that former colleagues would think that I was washed up and couldn't hack it in corporate, and so that's why I chose to be a consultant. And so having that concern obviously would not lead to wanting to publish anywhere, especially on LinkedIn or anywhere else, right? So for you, really questioning what might be the blocker, might be in the way of you really diving into thought leadership and getting to the point where you've got a clear positioning, clear messaging, and driving value for your ideal clients and prospects. But be honest with yourself first. That's where I started. I started absolutely in a place of being unwilling to even dip my toe into posting on LinkedIn. I don't even think I'd ever made a post that said announced my business, for example. I don't know. I could go back and look for sure, but I was never at that point. And now to get to the point of this weekly podcast, for example, and a weekly newsletter and regular posting on LinkedIn, for example, you can do this too. You can get to this place. And I can assure you, if I go back and read what I've written, even probably 2 months ago or 2 weeks ago, I would question that it wasn't good enough. But at the end of the day, being willing to write and put yourself out there, to leverage this writing as a tool to refine and clarify your messaging is incredibly invaluable for your business and to build up the muscle and the thought process and thinking and identifying as a business owner, as an expert, as an advisor, as a consultant, as a peer to your clients. So that's how I would characterize it for you in terms of what I see to be the common blocker for independent consultants when it comes to thought leadership. Primarily a worry about, do I have something to say and who am I saying it to? And is it going to do more harm than good? Let's normalize that is very common, and it's okay. Keep going anyway, or get started anyway, so that you can start building, from somewhere. You can't leap from doing nothing to being phenomenal at it without paying the price. And the price is writing and publishing or speaking or whatever your mechanism is, and learning from that and getting to the point where you've done that, you're using that action in order to create the feedback for yourself and to create that, even that identity of you are a thought leader, you are an expert. So that is the common scenario that I commonly see for consultants with respect to thought leadership. And so I'll give you the solution and this hidden asset that you can leverage in your business to make it easier to create valuable thought leadership, based on this hidden asset that I'll tell you in a minute. That's a little tease. But first, I want to let's just remind ourselves why prioritize thought leadership in the first place. Why do this? Why write on LinkedIn? Why have a podcast? Why engage in a speaking, have a speaking calendar for yourself? Ultimately, the reason why you want to be doing that is to fuel both the short game and the long game in your business. From a short game perspective, you're fueling things like the ability to initiate conversations, whether those are online or in person. You're creating awareness of who you are and what you do and your expertise so that people will engage with you. And ultimately, the most obvious is generating leads. And from a long game perspective, you're strengthening your reputation as an expert. You're driving inbound leads, which are honestly the best, right? So you're not having to go out and create leads. You're creating that inbound interest for yourself, and ultimately more demand than you can handle. And you become that sought after expert. That's why it's really important to prioritize thought leadership. So we've talked about why you might not be willing to either start a thought leadership process for yourself, or create a consistent thought leadership process for yourself, or really, own the thought leadership process in your business, and why it's so important. So now I've been teasing it, but let's just tell you what this hidden asset is. What is the solution to help you overcome the resistance that you might have to thought leadership, or at least consistent thought leadership, and how to make your thought leadership more valuable for your business and for your clients ultimately? That untapped asset in your business is essentially the work that you're doing and the conversations that you're having. That might sound incredibly simplistic, and it is, but I want to remind you that every single day you're either working with a client, or you're having a sales conversation, or you're having a networking conversation, or maybe you're talking with a peer every single day, or maybe you're reading an email of some sort or working on a deliverable. Every single day in your business, your working day in your business, you're having those types of interactions and activities. And on top of that, you've got such a wealth of past client work, whether it's from your current consulting business or from past corporate work that you did in a consulting capacity or in an employee capacity. You have an untapped wealth of examples of types of challenges and patterns and themes and unique takes on solutions that you have to offer, that are sitting there waiting for you, and can be a form that the inputs into the content that you can be creating. This is the untapped asset in your business. Now, again, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but so often we overlook this. We think that we need to, really carve out a half a day to be able to write a solid article, or we need to carve out a couple of days to build out a white paper, or we need to be able to have a couple of hours to record a podcast or to prepare for a speaking engagement, for example. We think that, we need to be able to clear our head and think about things really, in a fresh way. And what I want to say to you is none of that is necessary, because every single day, Every single interaction, whether it's big or small, has some kind of breadcrumb for you to be able to take and build it into some form of valuable thought leadership and content for your business. So, what I call this is the circular. So, not only do you have this untapped asset in your business, but what I also want to share with you is that this untapped asset in your business, all of these examples, these interactions, these seemingly innocuous conversations, everything ranging from a seemingly not innocuous conversation to to something that seems really serious, like a final deliverable, and everything in between, are all potential sources for your thought leadership. And the thing that I want to tell you too is that it's not just about you and your business and the thought leadership, but as you're starting to uncover these examples and these patterns and leveraging every single conversation that you have as an input into your thought leadership, it also creates what I call a circular value model. And that circular value model is first and foremost, you're giving value to the person that you're talking with. It might be that your client that you're working with. It might be a potential client that you're talking about a potential engagement with. It might be someone that you're networking with. It might be someone that you just met. It might be a potential collaborator or channel. Whomever you're talking with, you're giving value to them through that conversation and through that interchange back and forth. And from there, you take that value and dissect it to see what are the patterns, what are the what are the patterns that I just heard, or what's something unique that I heard in this conversation that I was just talking to this person about. And is that a theme across other conversations, or is it something really unique, or is it a way that they describe the challenge in a way that I haven't heard before, or that succinctly describes the root cause of a common industry challenge that that I've been trying to put my finger on? Like those are the kinds of things that you're taking away from that conversation and creating value to your business. So this circular value model that we're talking about right now that can fuel your thought leadership is number one, you're providing value to the client. That's kind of the beginning of the circle. And then number two, you're creating value for your own business by capturing those learnings, those results, the language that you're hearing, the patterns and themes that you're noticing, and leveraging that to create content or case studies or refine your positioning. And then from there, the next part of the circular value is to then start creating, creating this or translating it into frameworks or actual tools in your business. So not only do you have content, but now you've got intellectual property. And then the final part of this circle is that it gives value back to the client. It gives value back to your potential clients and your current clients because now you've got this intellectual property that and this perspective and a way of thinking about the problems and the solutions in your particular field of work that can help your clients, your consulting clients, to get results faster. So that's what this circular value model is. And you'll see a visual of this in the show notes. You can look at it in more detail. But when you think about that is the hidden asset. And when we go back to the original question when we started this podcast, which was, what am I going to say? I want to start working on thought leadership, or I want to improve my thought leadership, but I'm getting stuck with what do I say, or what am I going to speak about? That is the answer. That is the answer for you. The hidden asset that you want to be leveraging are all of those interactions. Do not write off a single one of them. Every conversation you have, every meeting that you're in, every sales call that you're having, every looking back at past engagements and the current client work that you're doing, the peers that you're talking to, the groups that you might be a part of. That is the source of all of your all of your thought leadership. The biggest challenge that I see is that we overlook these things as this is mundane or this is just common knowledge or whatever we talked about on today's call, or whatever this deliverable was about was more, client specific. It can't be something that's genericized across for others to learn from, or for me or for you to, demonstrate your thought leadership. And I want to push back on you and say, flip that and think about it from the perspective of every interaction is a potential value to your overall audience, and ultimately to your intellectual property. If you start thinking about every single interaction could turn into a post on LinkedIn, every single interaction could turn into a podcast episode, every single interaction could turn into a speaking topic. Every interaction could turn into a white paper. When you start thinking about it from that perspective, you're able to then start pulling out ideas and seeing those themes and patterns, and seeing what seems maybe normal, or just the way things are. You start to see that that's not necessarily the case. That even if it is something that seems very obvious, like even this episode that we're talking about right now, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but to be able to highlight it for your ideal clients, like I'm highlighting it for you right now, even if it feels like it's kind of motherhood and apple pie, as my old CEO used to say, is kind of just mundane and well known. Those are sometimes the most impactful things to be reminding your ideal clients of, the fundamentals. So what I want to encourage you today is to commit yourself and prioritize thought leadership as an important pillar in your business, and to leverage this idea of the circular value model I just shared with you, which starts with really looking at every interaction. When you finish a meeting, or even during the meeting, jotting down ideas of what those themes and patterns could be that apply to all of your clients, and then start collecting and accumulating those and using them as a bank of ideas for your thought leadership. We'll talk here in a moment a little bit more about, I'm getting slightly ahead of myself in terms of how to operationalize this, but leveraging this circular value model so that you are creating dual return on your time. By that, I mean the dual return on your time is that you are not only providing value to your client that you're working with, or to whomever you're interacting, but you're also simultaneously creating the value and capturing the value for your own business, and fueling that thought leadership as a result. Let me give you a quick example of what this can look like, and then we'll talk about the 5 steps to operationalize it. And then we'll wrap up the episode. So the example. So there's an example that I wanted to share with you is a leadership consultant. We'll call her Jane for this purpose, so that we're not using any real names here. But she was working with. So she's a leadership consultant, and she was working with her clients on some strategy, and trying to figure out why the strategy wasn't flowing through the organization. So there's a bit of we'll call it a strategy to execution disconnect in this situation. And so her goal was to try to figure out and help the client not only on the strategy, but also making sure that it was being translated into operational behaviors. And so from there, what she did was, in working with the client, which she did in a very intuitive way, right? This is something she's very, very accustomed to. This is part of her expertise, what she does on a daily basis, and what, the value that she brings to her clients. But as she started thinking about this as, how do I just naturally help my clients? Was the question that we came up with for her to ask herself. What comes naturally to me? What are the steps? Let me just write these down as I go, versus just kind of doing it intuitively and not really realizing even what she was doing. And so what I like to call this is kind of a dual paper. So if you imagine a piece of paper and you just draw a line down the middle of it, lengthwise. And on the left-hand side is what she was working on with the client, trying to figure out what are the blockers for the why this strategy wasn't flowing into the organization. And so the meeting notes really were on the left-hand side of her paper, and on the right-hand side of her paper, she was just documenting how she was thinking about how she was helping her clients. What was the process that she was using as she was going through helping the client to address this strategy to execution disconnect. And as a result of this simple activity, she started realizing, and over the course of a couple of meetings, she started to realize that there was a very specific process that she was using. She just didn't realize what it was because it had come so naturally to her and she had done it so many times. And so taking that step back, it allowed her to create a visual tool that she could share with her client to help them see how to translate strategic priorities into clear messaging and actions that happen on a weekly, monthly, quarterly cadence. And then she productized this into something she calls the strategy activation map, and has been able to then leverage that for her content, for her thought leadership, for her sales process, and how she describes what she does and the outcomes to her clients, and ultimately to in her own client delivery as well. Now it's a tool that she uses and has formalized versus just being something that she kind of naturally does but doesn't realize what it entails because it comes so naturally to her. So the takeaways of this example is what might feel normal for you in your daily interactions is often the thing that is your signature, or your signature approach or your framework or your intellectual property. And so really use that tool I just shared with you, which is drawing that line down the middle of the paper lengthwise, and really tracking what you're doing with a client on the left, and then how you're doing it and how you're thinking about it on the right, to start capturing this intellectual property for yourself and these frameworks for yourself and these content ideas for yourself. Another thing you might be capturing on that right hand side of the paper is the way a client phrased something that you hadn't really, that feels like a great way to continue to describe, or to go out and describe that you may not have thought about that way of framing it before, or a simple solution that you came up with that feels really unique that you could share. This type of specificity is what creates value in your thought leadership and creates the ability for you to overcome that potential writer's block or speaker's block that you might be having when you think you don't know what to say, or that what you have to say is not unique enough. This hidden asset in your business which is what you're doing every single day anyway. You want to be able to create that dual value from it. As we wrap up, I want to share with you the 5 steps to operationalize this circular value cycle, or this way of starting to build out a thought leadership bank for yourself. So the 5 steps are: number 1, I want to remind you to think of yourself as an expert. It's kind of like going back to what I shared with you when I first started. I was the idea of publishing on LinkedIn, even a simple, I'm launching a business. So far beyond what I ever thought I would be willing to do, and that's truly comes down to the simple fact that at that time, I definitely did not think of myself as a business owner. I did not think of myself as an expert, and I definitely didn't think of myself as anyone that anyone else would want to be listening to. So that's the first step in this process, to start creating a much more consistent, valuable thought leadership process for your business, is to think of yourself as an expert. You get to decide. There's no thought leadership police that come along and tell you can't decide you're an expert. You give yourself credit for what it is that you know and what it is you're an expert in. And that is incredibly important as a foundation for this process. So that's the first step in operationalizing this circular value cycle as a way to build up your thought leadership bank. Number 2, put yourself in the shoes of your ideal client. Really get into their head. Ask yourself how they're thinking. Use that tool I just shared with you to write down phrases that the way they describe the problem or the way they describe what they think is the blocker to what they're trying to accomplish or the results they're trying to achieve. Number 3, you want to rewire your brain so that you're noticing these patterns and these trends and you're identifying commonality between solutions and between clients. And you're not just writing it off of, this is just I'm working right now, so I'm in client delivery right now, so I'm not working on my business. You want to be thinking about these as dual all of the time, no matter what it is you're doing, that that you're working with your clients or your prospects or having conversations, and it can also benefit your business at the same time. So it's rewiring your brain to be looking for those things. The next step of the 5 steps is to prioritize thought leadership. Prioritizing the time and the outcomes, whatever your thought leadership goals are, whether it's posting on LinkedIn once a week or writing a newsletter or writing an article or creating a case study once a month or speaking once a quarter, whatever your goals are from a thought leadership perspective, prioritizing it so that you're not continuously kicking the can down the road. And the way to prioritize that is to implement this circular value cycle that I just shared with you so that you're not thinking that you need time on Friday, a couple of hours on Friday to work on this, that you're noticing that you can be doing this in parallel with your client delivery or with your conversations. This is not something that is separate. This is something that should be fully integrated as part of your business. And that's the easiest way to prioritize it because then it doesn't require you to carve out extra time. You can be collecting these ideas and these concepts and these patterns and these trends and these ways of thinking about your ideal clients and the problems they have every single day as you work with, as you're doing your work. And then finally, treat this as an experimentation. This is not something you're going to be good at right away. This is not, unless you've got this kind of background, which in that case, it might not be something that is harder for you to be consistent at, but you can certainly be leveraging this type of circular value cycle to increase the effectiveness of your thought leadership. But treat it as an experiment. You might not be good at it right away, but that doesn't mean that you can't get so much better through practice. And that's what it really requires is practice and practice over and over again until you do become much more impactful with the thought leadership that you're publishing and you feel more confident in doing so. And then you start putting yourself into bigger stages, bigger audiences, and really building up that reputation for yourself so that you're known for and sought after for the expertise that you have. Those are the 5 steps to operationalize your circular value cycle and ultimately make it so much easier and much more impactful to have a consistent and effective thought leadership process and routine and system in your consulting business. So, as we wrap up today's episode, I want to encourage you to put this episode into action. Set aside some time to put this process in place and remind yourself before you go into your next client meeting or your next sales call to try that exercise I gave you of drawing the line down the middle of the paper and keeping track of the intellectual property or the ideas that you have or those phrases that you heard on the right-hand side of your paper so you can capture that perspective and start building up a thought leadership bank for yourself. And ultimately create dual value in all of these interactions, the dual value for the people you're interacting with and also for your business. And then finally, if you want to help with implementing a thought leadership system and routine into your business in the way that we've talked about today, or any other goal that helps you to make your business more predictable and to hit the goals that you're setting for yourself, whether they're revenue or the amount of time that you're spending or the types of engagements that you're landing. That is the type of work that I do with my clients in a coaching capacity. So you can go to consultmelissa.com and set up a coaching exploratory call. And I look forward to meeting you and seeing if working together would be a good fit. Thanks for tuning in today, and I will see you next week.